critique against socialism or communism, that everyone has to think together at the same time and we all follow the same ideas. This is saying that that is a good thing. And not only is it a good thing, we should all hook our brains into one collective technology sphere where we're all controlled by one thought and we all share thoughts and we're all just like part of a giant hive. So, like, the stereotypical joke about leftist ideas, it wants that. Like how on the right there was like the comedic cartoon level capitalist. This is the comedic cartoon level communist. And then remember how on the right side there was an idea up here on the left that I couldn't get to because it was dead center in the middle? That is Ing Socialism. I think that's how it's pronounced. The reason it's dead center is because it doesn't care about morality or economy or anything else. You know the book 1984? Okay, well, this is the government from 1984. And it's saying the whole thing that Big Brother is watching, you give your entire agency to the state and the state controls everything. This is saying that's a good thing. And it's not technically left or right because it's just all about control. So right in the middle above everything else, you have a super powerful Big Brother government that wants nothing but the best for you. And if you question it, they'll kill you. So we are now done with both authoritarian quadrants of the compass. I'm going to change shirts, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the libertarian left ideologies. We are now on to the libertarian left quadrant, which is on the bottom left. This is the first quadrant that we are going to see a progression away from government rather than a progression towards government. While this will maintain some beliefs that we saw in the previous quadrant about community and people working together, this one will have more of a focus on social issues as well as people's individual worth, as well as the aforementioned push from less government eventually to being actively anti-government. So let's get started. So since the new center is up here at the top right, we're going to start here and work our way out. With our first one, progressivism. Progressivism isn't as much of a political ideology as it is a sort of policy. It's basically the idea that in tech, social, and economic places, progress can be made towards a better collective goal. Or basically aspects of the human condition can be improved through learned behavior and essentially works as a means of social reform. Directly beneath that is welfarism. Now, this isn't the policy of welfare, which is something else, although you could say the two are kind of related. Instead, this is a form of thought that asks about the consequences of an action. Or in other words, say there's some policy change or someone new coming to power or what have you. Welfarism is the idea of acting what it could possibly happen or who could possibly be hurt by this action. So say a government wants to outsource jobs to another country. A welfare's chief concern would be what happens to the pre-existing workers. It's essentially a humanitarian way of looking at cause and effect. To the left of that, we have eco-transhumanism. Now, this is one of those wacky ones that's here because it's technically like kind of caught in the middle, so bear with me. It is the idea that the ecosystem and nature are paramount, and therefore we need to increase technology in order to help it. Now, while more moderates within this ideology think that that is done by creating green energy or renewable energy sources that won't harm the planet, the full extent of this is that we need to rapidly get to the point to where space travel is possible so that part of the population can leave the Earth and therefore protect it. So, space race in order to save the trees. Yeah. Just beneath that, we have liberal democracy. This is the ideas of liberalism that we talked about earlier, applied directly to a democratic government, or essentially the ideas of the individual being protected in a system in which the individual decides what happens, or group of individuals, you get the point. This is where you see things like separation of powers and different branches of government, and the system itself is built all around as a means of protecting human and individual rights. And then down to the right of that, we have Nordic liberalism. Nordic liberalism is a practice that's seen in Europe, and it's basically the idea of capitalism, but with a social safety net. As with the majority of current world governments, there's things like public sector jobs and private economy and yada yada. But the main focus of a Nordic democracy is that for the poor and needy, there are social systems in place to help them, and then past that, their main concern is whatever makes the populace happy. When a lot of people talk about wanting capitalism with social programs, it's normally something like this they're referring to. And then beneath that, somehow, is technological primitivism. Okay, so bear with me here. This is the idea that technology and modern industry is good, but the society that has been created because of it is not good. So therefore, we need to create technology and it means that it can continue to progress but without social regression. In other words, iPhone good, iPhone rot your brain. Make iPhone that do good but no rot brain. Again, that whole thing I mentioned earlier about just because two things are next to each other doesn't mean they're similar. Yeah. And then to double down on that point, we have accelerationism. So acceleration